answers to that question, and I'm going to yield to Mr. Jordan for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Pidluzny, did I get that close? I apologize.
That's it.
All right, I'll call you doctor from now on, I think. I'll just stick with that. What do you think is the biggest threat to, right now, where's the biggest concerns about free speech actually happening?
I think the two biggest problems are a lack of viewpoint diversity. As John Stuart Mill explains, it's not enough to have free speech or free expression rights. You need to be being presented with ideas that challenge you to think outside of your comfort zone or outside of the box.
I guess I'm asking, was that more so on college campuses or in elementary
Oh, I think the situation on college campuses is much worse.
Yeah, much worse.
Yeah.
We have all the, we got safe spaces, and where you can go and you can't be triggered or whatever, and people can't say that. You got free speech zones.
Yeah, Ms. Berg and I were actually just talking about the fact that a lot of the things you put trigger warnings on in college are a lot of the things that students are trying to remove from the curriculum, like depictions of rape in classical literature. Those are the things that they are talking about in middle school and in high school.
Well, so I guess when it comes to, elementary or primary education, that's about what's appropriate for kids. That's a different debate than college campuses, adults, free speech. Is that right?
Absolutely, right. So I think it's perfectly reasonable for K-12 to ask, are these resources well tailored to our educational objectives? And so you can never remove a book to restrict access to political ideas or social perspectives, right? However, and this is from Justice Blackmun writing in PICO, First Amendment principles would allow a school board to refuse to make a book available to students because it contains offensive language or because it is psychologically or intellectually inappropriate for the age group, or even perhaps because the ideas it advances are manifestly inimical to the public welfare.
Yeah, because moms and dads don't like that. That's a different animal. On a college campus, can a safe space and a free speech zone be at the same location?
Well, they have different objectives, so I would say no. But a free speech zone is itself problematic because it suggests that there's only one part of the campus that permits free speech.
Because it seems to me, where's the free speech zone supposed to be?
Yeah. Well, I mean, typically it's in the quad somewhere. Some states are actually forcing.
I'm talking. It seems to me the First Amendment is the First Amendment. A free speech zone should be just about everywhere. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
It should be everywhere.
But for time, place, manner restrictions or insightful speech, absolutely.
We understand that. And tell me about these. I remember we had some hearings a few years ago. We had Ben Shapiro and Adam Carolla and other people come in. And we had college professors come in. Tell me about these bias response teams. I remember that from a few years back.
I think they're one of the most insidious things that are happening on college campuses. There are hundreds of them out there. Basically, they look different on every campus. They often include police officers. They often include student life administrators. Basically, what happens is you create some kind of portal, and students are encouraged to anonymously make complaints about things that are said or done. And this triggers some kind of an investigation. Sometimes the bias response team can refer for punishment or even enact punishment, but the design of the process is that it be reputation damaging and onerous, so that any reasonable, objectively reasonable student would want to avoid this. How do you avoid it? Well, you avoid it by saying anything that anyone could take offense at. Yeah. And that's the problem, and that's the point.
You don't want someone to report you to the bias response team. It chills everyone's speech on campus.
Well, you can't even watch Ben Shapiro in your dorm, right?
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I'm concerned about is this term misinformation. Misinformation gets used, it seems to me. However someone defines misinformation. If you engage in misinformation, then that speech is not allowed to happen. And I'm very concerned about that because I actually think that one of the biggest purveyors of maybe the biggest purveyor of misinformation is the government. Government tells us things all the time that aren't accurate, but somehow if a citizen says something, then they're going to get attacked by, I think, often by the left for spreading misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, the very concept of misinformation, the idea that we should be banning it actually flies in the face of the idea of an intellectual marketplace, where if you have dialogue between different ideas, the ones that are true are going to rise to the top, and the ones that are simply false will rise to the bottom. So, for example, we didn't do a whole lot of scientific discussion of masks and how effective masks were. Right? We just heard our public health authorities tell us, well, that they don't help, and then that they do help, and then that they don't help unless they're N95. Right? And the problem with that is It reduces our confidence in government and our public health officials. That's a huge problem.
Very much so.
I wish they would have just said, we're
That
not
wasn't-
totally sure.
That's not the only example. There's all kinds of examples where the government told us one thing that turned out to be just the opposite, and yet if you questioned that, you were labeled as the one spreading misinformation, and your speech got attacked. So we got to be very careful with that phenomenon as we move forward. With that, I'd yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan, for your thoughtful questioning. And now, Ms. Presley, it is my honor to recognize you for your 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Chair.